Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been going over the Terry Felke-Morris book, Web Development and Design Foundations with HTML5, 8th edition. We're up to Chapter 5 of 14. And Chapter 5 is, for lack of better words, it's a chapter on some web design best practices. We see our objectives here. Describe the most common types of website organization. Describe principles of visual design. Design for your target audience. Create clear, easy-to-use navigation. Improve the readability of text on web pages. Use graphics appropriately on web pages. Apply the concept of universal design to web pages. Describe web page layout design techniques and apply best practices of web design. In many ways, this is kind of a culmination or a kind of a putting together of a lot of the stuff we've covered in earlier chapters. Overall design is related to site purpose. Well, the bottom line is this. Notice the top one that's right there, the top picture that you see. kayakdoorcounty.net. Probably wouldn't be nearly as effective a website if it was all text. But it's something about kayaking in the Door County area, so hence the pictures. The next one down, web design and instructional technology resources. Now in that case, would that have been improved with those resources, with a picture of the resource, making that a hyperlink or whatever? Possibly yes and possibly no. You've always got to know your audience. And for example, typically younger people like brighter colors. Typically younger people like more splashy pictures and very little text. Whereas a lot of times with older people, they like more muted colors and they like more text typically than they do images. So 3 different types of website organization: hierarchical, linear, and random. Hierarchical, as it says, you've got a clearly defined home page. You've got navigation links to major site sections. Typically it is what's going to be used for commercial and corporate types of website. You can see there's a lot of it makes sense, for lack of better words. Now one thing you have to worry about is being too shallow. Because if right off the home page, in this example, they've got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different things right underneath there. You may have heard of the saying, miles wide and inches deep. That's kind of what this is right here. So as they mentioned, be aware of the number of major navigation links and try to limit it at each level to no more than about 4 or so. You also don't want it to be too deep. In an ideal world, as they mentioned right there, there's the 3-click rule, where a user can find anything she or he wants on a website by clicking just 3 times. Now, that may not even always be possible, but you should at least shoot for it. Linear organization, that typically makes sense if you have some kind of an online tutorial where somebody is stepping through it, and it should be done in a certain way. They mentioned there that it could be a tour, it could be a presentation, but it's meant to be done sequentially. Random, not typically used for commercial sites, but if you had an artistic site, maybe literally an artist or maybe a band or something like that. One thing about random organization, there's no clear path through the site. All right, and that's why some people are very opposed to a random type of organization. All right, design principles: repetition, contrast, proximity, and alignment. Repetition: repeat visual elements throughout the design. It's kind of nice to have a natural look and feel between pages. All right, contrast: add visual excitement and draw attention. This picture they show here from the Casita Sedona is much better because it has pictures in it. Group related items. Put things together that naturally seem like they belong together. Alignment. Align items to create visual unity. You may or may not agree with the way that this page is set up. All right, there's things about it you might like, there's things about it you might not like, but it's in many ways, for lack of better words, there's a symmetry to it. It does make sense when you take a look at what's in it. Designed to provide for accessibility. Who benefits most from increased accessibility? The answer is but really everyone. Not just people with any kind of a limitation, be it physical or otherwise. But as mentioned, a person with a slow internet connection, a person with an old outdated computer, a person using a mobile phone. You provide for accessibility not because it's not only because it's the right thing, right? But it just plain makes sense. It's based on the what's called the POUR principle. P, perceivable, as it says, content must be perceivable. O, operable, interface components must be operable. U, understandable, content and controls must be understandable. And R, robust. Content should be robust enough to work with current and future, whatever it happens to be. I'd say out of all those, and this is my own biased view, the understandable would be the most important. If your site doesn't make sense to people, they're not going to want to return to it. Robust is also important. I don't mean to downplay perceivable or operable, but that's my opinion. Writing for the web. Avoid long blocks of text. You're not writing a book. You're not writing a newspaper. Use bullet points when it makes sense. Use headings and subheadings, but be very careful with the way that you use those. And what I mean by that is, as an example, typically you're only going to have one H1 heading per page. Okay. Use short paragraphs. Typically use common fonts. Now, some people don't agree with that, and you may or may not be aware of this. But as an example, if I go out here, there's Google Fonts out here, and with Google Fonts, last time I heard there were, I don't know exactly, 818 different font families. These aren't the ones that you're typically going to see. In other words, these are ones that Google has come up with. So if I decide I want this for whatever reason, maybe I'm doing a Dracula site, and I want this. All right. I can select that. Okay, and if I want to, I can end up using that font if I want to. Okay, and there, like I said, just page after page of different types of fonts. Use approximate text size. Use strong contrast between text and background. We've talked about this before. Use columns instead of wide areas of horizontal text. People are still used to somewhat, at least most people, especially as they get older, of having some kind of symmetry in the way that their site is set up. Carefully choose text and hyperlinks. As I mentioned this to you before, don't have click here. Hyperlink keywords or phrases. Don't do entire sentences. Don't do entire paragraphs. I've seen that. That just looks bad. Always check your spelling. All right? And remember that even spell checkers aren't foolproof. All right? It's always good to have somebody else take a look at it. It's just like when you're showing somebody your resume. Even if you're sure it's all spelled okay, you should still have one or two people check on it. Color theory is an important concept. The study of color and its use in design. Primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. How should you do this? All right, they talk about monochromatic, analogous, and complementary. In other words, when you were trying to figure out how to set up a site, how you're going to set up different things on a site, should you go monochromatic, where it's basically the same color but just different shades? Should it be analogous, where two colors that are close to each other on a color wheel, or should it be complementary, where they're on the opposite edge? Many people feel it's the complementary that you should use because that sticks out the best. I don't like this because they're Minnesota Viking colors. All right. Split complementary, as it says, a main color, the color opposite it, and two others adjacent. Triadic, three colors that are in equal distance away from the color wheel. And tetradic, two complementary color pairs. There's all sorts of ways that people feel that you should do this. You can go out, and there are sites that you can go out to after you've created a page, and it'll check your color and the like for you. But the bottom line is this: if you're creating a site for someone else, they'll typically tell you the types of colors they want to use. Sometimes, fortunately or unfortunately, they won't know what they want until you show them, and then possibly they'll know what they don't want. All right, choose one color to be dominant. So if you've got a logo, you might base it off of something like that. All right, use other colors as accent colors. Don't be afraid to use neutral colors. A lot of times people don't like to use white. They use off-white or cream or whatever. Don't restrict yourself just to web-safe colors. And you might want to use tinting and the like. When you choose colors for text and background, contrast is needed. We've talked about this before. And here's some of those online tools I mentioned before. Here are some additional resources for color schemes. And it may not sound like it's that big a thing, one way or the other. But that said, remember that sometimes people, you don't know why somebody might come to your website, and you might not know why somebody may or may not return to your website. Right? Again, as we talked about, appealing more to younger adults, kind of a flashier type of design. Older adults, maybe, but maybe that's even too colorful. Try to appeal to everyone, and again, kids and preteens type of an idea. You notice the colors. We've talked about it before. Use of graphics and multimedia. Some of the stuff that will be discussed in here: file size and dimension matter, provide for robust navigation, anti-aliasing, providing for alternative text, and using only necessary multimedia. It's recommended that any graphic be 60K or less for loading purposes. All right? As it says, the third bullet may be the most important on there. Be sure your message gets across, even if the images are not displayed. Always provide plain text links at the bottom of the page. Remember, not everyone who will be bringing up your site may be able to see everything that's on the site. Maybe they can't see anything. Don't overuse animation. Maybe you've seen this on sites. All right, and even cool animation is cool the first time, and it's not really that cool as you keep seeing it over and over and over again. Notice the difference here between anti-aliasing and aliasing text and images. The smooth look that you get from anti-aliased text as opposed to alias text. Use only necessary images. Reuse images. That can be an important one. If you reuse images, maybe an image that's on every page that's in your header area or whatever, those images can be cached and they can be loaded a lot faster. Your goal, as mentioned here, is the image size should be as small as possible with acceptable display quality. Watch load time. Most people will only wait. It used to be that they'd wait about 10 seconds for a page to load. I don't think most people are that patient today. All right. You should always test multiple browsers, test multiple screen resolutions, test multiple media. So test your website, make sure it looks good on a desktop, on a laptop, on a tablet, on a cell phone. Make sure it looks good in different kinds of browsers. Make sure it looks good in different kinds of platforms. Does it look good on a Linux box as opposed to a Unix, or as opposed to an Apple machine, as opposed to a Windows machine, etc. Designed to look good at various screen resolutions. Use either a fixed width or a percentage width. We'll look at some of that in more depth in later chapters. Make your site easy to navigate. The key word in there is it should be intuitive. A person should be able to look at your site and figure out how to get through it. Provide clearly labeled navigation in the same place on each page, either along the top or along the left-hand side. More often than not today it's along the top. Consider, so here's a navigation bar. If you've never seen breadcrumb navigation, that typically shows you where you are in the hierarchy. Some people, use graphics. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. If you are going to use graphics for navigation, provide a navigation method with just textual on the bottom of the page. Sitemaps are kind of nice. A lot of sites you'll see that at the bottom of the page there'll be a link for a sitemap where you can get to any place you want on the site. Skip to content hyperlink, a lot of times where people know where they want to go. Wireframes. Wireframes can start out and they can be as simple as something sketched on a napkin. It shows the basic structure of the page. The header is shown there, the navigation is shown there, and a little bit of the content along with the footer and where you're going to put the images. From there, you start working. They talk here about above the fold. That's an old newspaper term where you fold an old physical newspaper in half, and the most important stuff should be on the top half of the page. Use adequate white space or blank space. Use an interesting page layout. As they say right there, this is usable, but it's boring. There's no pictures. All right. Notice how they fixed it, made it better, and maybe made it better still. Now, not everyone is going to agree with that. You're never going to be able to make everybody happy. It just isn't going to work. Page layout design techniques. You can have a fixed layout. Notice fixed is also known as a rigid or an ice design, often at the left margin. More appealing, as it says, if the fixed with content is centered. The bottom example here looks better than the top one. You can have a fluid layout, also known as a liquid design, which expands to fill a browser resolution of any size. Adaptation, where as it says, typically it's got a width of 80%, so there's 10% on each side, which isn't used. What's really important here, as it says, is when you start thinking about how you're going to do this for mobile. This has happened. More people today access websites using mobile device than they do with desktops or laptops. So there's three approaches. You can create your own external mobile site, and many places do. A lot of times if you go out to a site and you go out to M followed by that site name, you'll have the mobile one. You can host a mobile site within your current domain, or you can configure your current website for mobile display using responsive web design techniques. Things that you have to think about for a mobile design checklist. You're going to have a small screen size. You may have heard the term mobile first. That's what many places do today. They think that the first way we're going to, typically we're going to make sure our site looks good on a mobile device, and usually when it starts like that, it'll start with a phone, and then it'll size its way upward. That's easier than going the other way. Remember, with mobile design, there can be bandwidth issues. Heck, there can be battery issues. You'll almost always want a single column layout for a phone. You may want, it says optimize images. You may not want any images there at all. Avoid display of non-essential content. Responsive web design says that basically your page will look good on any kind of media. That's the easiest way I can tell it to you. All right. Things you should think about here: page layout, browser compatibility. Again, test your page on every browser, and as much as possible on as many versions of every browser as you can. I mean, you don't want to go back down to IE2 or 3 or 4, but even IE8, 9, 10, Edge, the latest and greatest versions of Chrome, uh, Firefox, and go back a few years for Chrome and Firefox, Opera, etc. Check the color and the graphics, the multimedia. Okay, hopefully all that stuff just makes sense. And we've reached the end of another chapter. So again, nothing new, so to speak, in this chapter as far as tags or anything else. Rather, we talked about some best practices. We discussed the most common types of website organization, hierarchical, the linear, etc. We described some principles of visual design. We talked about the importance of designing for your target audience, including creating clear and easy to use navigation. Talked about how to improve the readability of the text on your web pages, oftentimes by providing additional graphic content. Talked about universal design and different ways that you can set up a page. All right, and that's really it for this chapter. Now, the next chapter, chapter 6, which I'm going to start tomorrow, that chapter is on CSS positioning. One of the harder chapters in the book because it's a different way of looking at things. After that, we'll go into chapter 7, which will be links, lists, and some more stuff about mobile. So I'll be coming to you with that stuff, ideally at least, tomorrow. Till then.